back to Bookstage and Screen. You're here with Gordon and Samantha, and we have got the immensely talented Craig Silvey on the line. Hi, Craig.
Hello.
How are you going over there in Perth?
Mate, it's just another wonderful day in Perth, Western Australia, but I'm very happy to be spiritually in Melbourne right now.
Beautiful. I imagine you've been travelling around quite a bit, promoting, Jasper Jones, but Jasper Jones in the in the form of a movie, because it has had many forms.
It has had many forms, yes, and I've been travelling around on the back of the circus. Film junkets are no joke. Yeah, we've kind of been everywhere over the past few weeks, but it's been really wonderful.
So when you first had the idea for Jasper Jones, I can't imagine that anyone thinks when they're writing a book, oh, this is going to lead to a play and a movie. So you wrote it. It was released in 2009.
That's right. Yeah.
So here we are 7 years later, and it's gone through a metamorphosis of being on stage and now a movie. Did you have any idea? Like, was it playing as a movie in your head as you were writing it, or? No,
I mean, as an author, you tend to be just fumbling in the dark a lot of the time. You're not. It's not particularly helpful to your process to worry about things like reception and criticism and what some sort of phantom audience or your considerations of what that might be might think about your work. You're more concerned about what's going down on the page and trying to kind of uncover your story, really, and the characters that inhabit it. So, I tend to try to sort of just control what I can control and worry about that stuff after the fact, I suppose.
Well, so it did get a great reception when it was published, and then you were approached, I imagined, for it to be put on as a play.
Yes, yeah. Things like rights sales happened quite quickly, actually. There was a terrific groundswell for the story. The film rights were sold when it was still in manuscript form and hadn't quite hit the shelf yet.
Yeah.
Stage adaptation happened, I guess, by degrees. Mm-hmm. The book has had this really remarkable endurance. It's had a really interesting kind of trajectory. It hasn't really, it hasn't hit these enormous peaks and then dipped as a lot of books that do really well tend to have. It's just this very, very strange, steady incline. Which is kind of gratifying because it suggests that it simply means that I think people are recommending it to their friends and lending it on and whatnot. And it's just sort of very slowly sort of built this, this followership. Yeah. And so, things like the adaptation have been really on the back of, the kind of passion of its readership. People are really supportive and great advocates for the story, and it's sort of let these things happen. It's really quite amazing.
Well, congratulations on being a trifecta, because we're called Book, Stage and Screen. Yes. So when we get someone who's done all three, we're quite pleased to have them on. We should make an award actually for people who do the
I'm
trifecta.
sure they'd be thrilled to
yes,
get one from us.
The triple threat.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
And so you started off as quite a young author. How old were you when you got your first book published?
Look, I finished that manuscript when I was still a teenager. I left high school and had a burning ambition just to write, so I eschewed university and I just moved to Fremantle from country Western Australia, and I got to work. The choice not to study was more a romantic one than an arrogant one, I suppose. I just really wanted to write, and so I just worked every awful entry-level job to fund the time, and it took me 3 years. And yeah, I think it came out. It would have hit the shelf just in my early 20s.
So, not having gone to university, have you along the way sort of sought out people to talk to or learn from, or are you just obviously you have an editor and you have your publishing house, but is there anyone else outside of that you've sort of gone to for advice or?
Well, most of my mentorship really came from books. I sort of learn by immersion. The best way for me to learn any craft, I think, is just to delve in, and I really read closely, the works that I admire the most, and I tend to have this kind of strange relationship with art, whereby I want to work out how it works. I want to kind of understand the magic of it, and so much like a mechanic who's interested in cars might want to sort of pop the boot and work out all its constituent parts and how everything kind of blends harmoniously and brings something to life. That's kind of how I feel about particularly the written word. And so I read books really, really closely, and that's been my process thus far. And heading into screenwriting and film, it's been much the same. I watch film and television really, really closely, and I've been learning the language of screenplays over the past couple of years. And it's much the same process. So it's less about sort of I guess it's less about talking to writers and screenwriters as it is really uncovering their work. That said, I do really love reading interviews, like the Paris Review interviews, and I'll seek out authors that I really admire and try to get under the skin of their craft and find out what their process is. But ultimately, it's when it comes down to your own creative process, it's just what works for you.
Well, we are looking at you on Wikipedia, and you mentioned something called Southern Gothic. Yes, and it's guaranteed 100% true. But while we've got you here, Southern Gothic fiction. Now, what's your attraction to Southern Gothic fiction? What is it, and why do you like it?
Well, look, it's Wikipedia, so take it with a grain of salt. Look, I wouldn't say I'm necessarily more attracted to Southern Gothic than I am to any other genre. I think maybe it's been, my relationship with Southern Gothic, I suppose, might be a little amplified given that Jasper Jones, certainly my story that has had the widest readership, follows a fairly Gothic template, and the character references Southern Gothic to a great degree. But I do love Southern Gothic stories. I think there's something about those regional American tales that for me, growing up regionally, feeling a little marginalised and displaced, kind of found some comfort in, or certainly I identify with a lot of those characters. The Carson McCullers book, To Kill a Mockingbird, Truman Capote, and Mark Twain. These books really spoke to me in an intimate way, and it was quite magical that stories set so far away in such a distant time could feel so contemporary for me, emotionally anyway.
Well, we have had people on saying similar things about Shakespeare and how they've struggled to come to terms with that. It's so far removed from what we are and what we're doing, and yet still
the themes are the same.
Yeah, things don't change.
I mean, it's quite amazing that regardless of the time or the setting, there are certain themes and certain sort of bastions of humanity that bleed through those and I don't know, they help us see ourselves in a different way. Sometimes it's those little tweaks, those differences that can be really illuminating.
Well, that's what actually I said this just before, because we were talking about box office and we were talking about your film, and I'd seen it on Tuesday. And I said, when I walked out, I really enjoyed the film. It was a great film, and I'd encourage everyone to see it.
She gave a very glowing review if you didn't pick us up on.
Oh, thank you very much.
FM in
yes,
Perth.
I'm sure. Yeah, we beam out there.
Well, we are the sound of the West, but not that far west.
Yeah, no, just Melbourne's
Fremantle.
West.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I did think was when I walked out, I thought, isn't it amazing that's a story from Australia in the 60s? And I thought that really the same fears and the same, people are different and we don't really understand it. They're still the same today. Like, it's the same thing that people are scared of, what they don't know, what they, the neighbours that they don't understand. That was my first thought when I walked up, and there's plenty of themes and things to think about in the film, but I was thinking that's really interesting that the same things play out today, really.
Yeah, that's right. And then sometimes I think it helps us to kind of absorb those things. I mean, there's something about setting a story that feels familiar but in a different place that kind of is a little more disarming and feels a little less kind of thematically didactic, I suppose. You know, we can be a little more easily sort of inveigled into a story, and if we can make those connections subconsciously, or we feel as though we haven't been led there and beaten over the head with it, I think sometimes it can be a little more successful in terms of, you know, us challenging how we feel and kind of recognizing the similarities of where we are in a contemporary place.
And what are you working on now? What's your next upcoming project? And what, you know, is it a play or a...
No, I tend to leave theatre to the thespians. Yes. I'm well out of my depth there. It's something I love, but it's very much beyond my skill set. But I will say, having worked on Jasper Jones to such an extent, you know, I wrote our shooting draft, and you know, I had the great privilege of being on set essentially every day, and you know, working closely with our director Rachel Perkins. And, you know, being involved with rehearsals and pre and post production and whatnot, it was really quite life changing. I really loved the process, and you know, film is it's quite intense. It's highly pressurized. It's difficult. It's challenging. And coming from a novelist background, which is largely solitary, I don't know. It was really nice being part of an enormous collaborative team. It was a great challenge. So I'm working on a film presently, working with Rachel again, and her production company. It's a Western, and set in Western Australia in the goldfields. In the late 19th century, and it's called The Prospector.
Okay, great. And where are you at with that? Have you got first draft about to?
Yeah, look, we're a draft and a half down essentially, and I'm you know, after the Jasper madness subsides, I'll be getting to work on the second draft, and you know, we're not too far away. I don't think there aren't huge structural issues to work on. It's just you know, some things that I need to consider and shift about, but we're in a pretty good place, I think.
And are you writing that on your own, because you co-wrote Jasper Jones with Sean Grant?
Yes, I know. I'm writing it on my own, yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That's a good challenge.
It is. Well, it's, you know, it's a bit of a code switch, I suppose. It's just I don't know, it's like learning a new language, I suppose, thinking about, you know, recrafting a story with a screenplay. For me, my process has been about fleshing the story out, developing it with a very detailed treatment. So prior to a screenplay, you write a treatment, which is essentially a kind of map of your story. And being a novelist, mine was a good 35,000 words too long, but you know, it was you know, it felt like you know, I'd done the bulk of the creative work in the treatment, and then it's just about sort of adapting that for the screenplay.
So being on set, did you find yourself, you know, holding back, or were you just sort of soaking it on? You sound like someone who would just stand there and soak it all in, or were you encouraged to contribute your ideas as well, or how do you?
Yeah, well, I was certainly busier than I had anticipated. You know, I was there on Rachel's invitation, and you know, she's incredibly generous and collegial, and she you know, great respect for my opinions and whatnot. So I was largely kind of at the split, right, the monitor with her. You know, you've got to be quite agile on a film set. There's any number of things that can go wrong at any given day, and will require adjustments for the scripts, or, you know, things will come up where you will have to you know, move a scene around. Maybe dialogue's not working as well as it might, or you know, any number of reasons why you might have to make adjustments. So I was there to facilitate those and make those. You know, and also it was just about no one knew that screenplay better than I did, or the story beats or the characters, and so I had an opportunity to speak with Rachel about that. On the fly, although there's not a huge amount of time on a film set, and we fit a lot of scenes into not many weeks. We had 118 scenes to film in 6 weeks, and it was, highly pressurized. So, any point I had to be made very quickly with a very clear solution. So, and a quick one.
Yeah.
So, there were lots to do, and but occasionally I could sort of step back and really just appreciate and marvel at the scenes that we were getting, and the fact that it was happening. So many talented people were pouring their efforts into this story that I'd written. It was really quite amazing.
And did you have anything to do with the actors? Like, did you talk to them about characters, and you'd come up with these characters? Or were they?
Yeah. I mean, I certainly did, and it wasn't my role to seek them out and be too demonstrative or too clear about who I felt their character was. But I was a resource for them, absolutely, particularly for our kids. I got to know them in the rehearsal period before we all got to set, and it was there that I was able to talk to them about their characters and what was motivating them and how they were feeling and whatnot. I love those kids. They were just really hungry to absorb whatever they could about their characters, and they're all really, really talented, really quite emotionally mature. It was a real joy to speak with them about it and get to know them.
I did say to Gordon when I came home, I said that Levi, isn't it, that plays Charlie?
Yeah.
When I looked him up, he's been kicking goals for a while. But I said he has such presence. I mean, they were such a stellar cast, the younger ones. They really carried. Considering the adult cast were so, talented. But they really held their own, I thought. And I said, he just was charismatic on screen. And of course, Aaron, I've seen him in Glitch and a few other things. He's fantastic. I said, I think he's one of those people, like when I saw Heath Ledger, and not that I'm saying I called Heath's career, but
she's completely responsible for Heath Ledger's career.
No, but you can just tell some people have just a charismatic quality, and you're like, wow, that's just... And I thought for such an emotional character, you played it really well. I just can't imagine, with kids ourselves, I'm thinking, I don't think my kids could do anything like that. But, yeah, they did really well. They were great.
Yeah, I mean, Levi in particular just arrived, Rachel describes it as match fit. He'd just come off Pan, which was an enormous studio film, and then he went straight into the second Red Dog film. He just came in enormously prepared, very, very experienced, certainly more experienced than I was on a film set. I was really fumbling my way about. And he's just a really thoughtful, really present actor.
Yeah.
I thought he carried our film just expertly and beautifully. He made great choices, and you're right, he can play big really well. He can get into that moment and take us on that journey. I thought he was terrific. I think Angari is someone to watch as well. She's enormously talented and very, very intelligent.
Yeah.
And really present. You're just drawn to her on the screen. Aaron, as you say, is just a really remarkable actor. He's very quite understated, but he's it's the small gestures for Aaron, but he does so much with us. You're really drawn to him. And Kevin Long, who plays Jeffrey Liu, was largely untried. He doesn't come from an acting background. We found Kevin in a kung fu class in Western Sydney, and he just inhabited that character. He just is Jeffrey Liu. He just really lit up the audition, and the role was his basically. He's just a really wonderful young man, and he can do what he likes. Really, he's got a range of talents.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, it's the future's looking bright for Australian cinema when you've got that coming up from the not the ashes, from the youth, I should say. Well, thanks so much for joining us today, Craig. Thanks for taking the time out of your red carpets and your screenwriting and all the other things you do, and playing a band, I should add, as well.
Well, the rest of the band sort of drifted away. And unfortunately, everybody has alternative careers, and I couldn't quite, given that I pay them nothing.
A one-man band. You're a one-man band.
I'm presently a one-man band. I'm not very good at that at the minute, so that might have to be deleted from the Wikipedia, that one.
Oh, right. Well, see, there you go. We just proved you can't believe everything.
Yeah. Lies! The lies!
Believe me, it's all nonsense. Yeah.
Well, lovely. Thanks, Craig, for joining us today.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Bye.